Black lights and booze burn when I record for Watts. And every black like Troy Davis who never had a fair shot.
Welcome to Left to Black. I'm your host, Mark Anthony Neal. We're here on location in Winston-Salem at Wake Forest University. We're joined by a special guest who's joining us today, Professor Brittney Cooper. Let me just begin by reading some of the accolades that folks have written about your brand new book, Eloquent Rage. Melissa Harris Perry writes, I was waiting for Ida Wells and Anna Julia Cooper, and Bell Hooks and Patricia Hill Collins, an author who wouldn't forget, ignore, or erase us black girls as they told their own story and that of the race and the nation. I was waiting and she has come in Brittney Cooper. Mark Eric Dyson writes, Cooper may be the boldest young feminist writing today. Her critique is sharp, her love of black people and black culture is deep, and she will make you laugh out loud even as she kicks the clay feet out from under your cherished idols. How are you doing today, Brittney?
I'm doing great, especially hearing that. I'm doing pretty good.
It's a wonderful book.
Thank you.
For those of us who have come to know Brittney Cooper, it is a Brittney Cooper book.
That's great.
You give very little fucks.
That's a goal.
Which is the Brittney that we all know. And yet it manages to do the kind of teaching that needs to be done, the kind of commentary that needs to be done, and it's accessible. The first thing I thought as I sat there is like, I can't wait to get my 15-year-old.
Oh, wonderful.
To be able to read this. So how are you feeling about the new book?
I'm feeling really excited because I think one of the key things that has been a hallmark of my career is that I never just wanted to write for academic audiences. Right. I always wanted to write a book that my homegirls who are not academics or my family members who didn't even go to college could read and understand and rock with. One of my most proud moments is getting to talk to my aunties about this book and being able to tell them that I tell stories about them in this book. And they were like, well, you know, how are we relevant to your book? And I said, in so many ways, y'all formatively shaped who I am. And I got to tell people about who you are to me. And so being able to write a book for them and about them, it means everything.
And at the same time, you drop Beyond Respectability, which is looking at, you know, your own black intellectual foremothers and the challenges that they pose in terms of us to think about gender and sexuality in more inclusive ways within the black community. There are a lot of scholars who wish they could write the scholarly book and still have the ability to translate, and translate's not even really the term, right? This ability to use multiple platforms, as you've been doing all throughout your career, to write a book that's more accessible, but doesn't trade off in terms of what it's doing intellectually. Talk about, as you're developing as a writer, how you're thinking about that in your head.
Well, some of it, look, I don't know that I could always do it. I think I started writing for the public with Crunk Feminist Collective as a way to heal from graduate school and from the way that learning the language of academies never felt totally natural to me because I'm a working class black girl from the deep South, and that's not the way that people talked and understood their experiences. And so part of it was always about trying to like recover my own voice and make sure, you know, I just remember that when I graduated with my PhD, one of my aunties, you know, she came up to me and she just looked at me. She just stared at me at my graduation party. And I said, why are you looking at me like that? And she said, I'm just trying to see if anything done changed, you know? And it's that kind of thing that always keeps me wanting to be, you know, authentic and connected. And I know that I have people who are like, if you ever forget where you come from, like, we want you to soar, but we also want you to stay grounded. And I feel like being able to write in both registers is both about staying grounded, but is also about this very early kind of code switching literacy that black kids have to learn. And unfortunately, too many black kids have to learn that kind of literacy in order to have any shot at success. And so for me, being able to hold both registers and say that they both matter is, I think, also an attempt to sort of hold the little girl that I was who didn't always negotiate those differing registers really well.
When Brittney Cooper is that 9-year-old black girl, what is she reading?
What am I reading? So 9-year-old Brittney is reading lots and lots of Babysitter's Club, all the Judy Blume books I could get my hands on, and reading Mildred Taylor, reading Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. Those were like the first black novels, black fiction that I read. Sneaking in reading Jet magazine because it was on my grandmother's coffee table, and then we had Ebony and Essence in our house, so I always thought Jet was like the old people's magazine, and like Essence was like my mama's generation, right? But I was a voracious reader, and my mom kept our house populated with books. But I also have this formative book that I read, and I don't even remember the name of it, but it was a young adult biography of Martin Luther King. It's How I Learned Who Rosa Parks Was. And I remember being in the 4th grade and having one of the few black teachers I had. I brought that book to school and I was reading it, and it had these little activities in the back that said, make a school play. So I did. My black 4th grade teacher, Miss Galden, she let me write and produce a play and star in a play about Rosa Parks. And for me, that's a foundational moment too of wanting to sort of write in an accessible way for young people.
Sometimes, you could ask 17 or 18-year-olds as they're graduating from high school, what do you want to be? And inevitably a bunch of kids will go, I want to be a writer. Right? And I'm always of the mindset, writers write. Once you start to write, you're a writer. You don't wait to become one.
Right.
When did Brittney Cooper become a writer?
That's so interesting. I feel like I became a writer by accident. What I wanted to be was a teacher. It's so funny probably because of Miss Galden. That was, for me, the pathway. It was the place where I felt inspired and seen, and I felt like there was a set of possibilities, and I wanted to always be that for somebody. And along the way, I think it just became important to be a good communicator. And so I think I'm just now starting to accept that I'm a writer. Like, I still sometimes call my homegirls up if I read a really good writer, and I go, see, such and such is a writer. Like, I'm like kind of a writer because it's part of our trade, So, and here's the other thing. I mean, I try to have high standards for myself, but I really want to grow as a writer. Like, I don't think that I've totally reached the level that I want to be at yet. Like, I think part of it for me is that I always want people to respect the craft of the thing they do. It's like why I gave up my very short-lived career as a spoken word poet, because I just shouldn't have been doing it. So, nope. But, writing, I feel like if I keep on with it, then I can, perhaps be formidable. But I hope that these first couple of attempts, I hope that they do the work that they're supposed to do.
Who is that writer for you, though, that makes you go back to the lab? Like I always say, and I've had the chance to tell them this many times, whenever I read Jelani Cobb, I always want to go back to the shed, right? It's like I need to work on my craft for a little bit, right?
That's right.
Who's that person for you?
I have like academic people, and I have, so like I think one of my academic faves, weirdly enough, maybe not weird, but Erica Edwards is a person whose mind that I just so admire.
I hear you.
Right? I love the way that she blends sort of amazing sort of pop culture examples in this really kind of rigorous scholarship. So she's like my scholarly goals. Kiese Layman is probably one of my favorite essayists right now. I don't think he gets enough shine, but I read him and I feel seen, and I feel like there's a level of emotional honesty and courage in his work that I wish more writers.
Probably too much.
That's right. Sometimes I'd be like, really though? So he is a person that makes me always want to sort of go deeper. And then there are just so many young Black women out here writing. I'm actually very excited about the young Black feminist Morgan Jerkins. I think she's got something special, and so I'm checking for her, seeing what she's bringing.
You're watching Left of Black. I'm your host, Mark Anthony Neal. We are on location at Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem. We're joined by Professor Brittney Cooper, who is an associate professor of Women and Gender Studies and Africana Studies at Rutgers University. She's a longtime contributor to Cosmopolitan, MSNBC's All In with Chris Hayes, the New York Times, the Washington Post, NPR, PBS. I could go on and on. She is the co-editor of the Crunk Feminist collection, the Feminist Press published 2017, the author of Beyond Respectability, Intellectual Thought of Race Women, University of Illinois Press, which was published last May, and the brand new Eloquent Rage, a Black feminist discovers her superpower. Not everybody gets to drop 3 books in a calendar year.
That's true.
What does that look like?
I'm not sure. I mean, mostly I feel like I should be somewhere taking a nap. But you know, the opportunities, they showed up, and you know, and I took them because I felt like now was the time. I'm also really excited because this is like peak blackness. We got all the people on TV. We got, you know, Black Panther is like coming out, and it's you know, look, these moments are short-lived, and when Black folks have them, we have to take them. And I think that this becomes our opportunity to change the narrative. Sometimes when we're not winning politically, we see this sort of cultural renaissance. And I just think it's cool to be able to be a part of it. Because like, I think there's an earlier generation of this, like our good friend Joan Morgan and Greg Tate, and you come out of that, you know, same generation of like hip hop heads doing really dope cultural criticism. Like I'll never forget in grad school, I stole this white girl's copy of Soul Babies. I was like, you don't need this. You don't appreciate what this book is about, but I do. And I just kept her book because when I read your book, I was like, what is this? Oh my God. And so I feel like there was like this ferment that I got to grow up being shaped by. And so it's sort of weird, but also cool to sort of be part of a new wave of that.
So let me give you another juxtaposition along those lines, right? You talk in the book about meeting or hearing Bell Hooks for the first time and reading her work, and it's like crazy talk, right, to you, right? What is this crazy? What does it feel like now on the other side when there are young feminists, men and women, who are reading Brittney Cooper and going, okay, this is crazy talk. What does it mean to be on that side of it now?
I sort of feel like I deserve it, right? Because I'm like, how uncool and unwoke could you have been? Like, sometimes it's so funny to me that I have emerged as one of these like supposedly sort of more radical left kind of woke people, because I totally wasn't that girl when I was like encountering Bell Hooks and even early Ta-Nehisi Coates. I was just like, these people are weird and I don't know, and like I should just probably be reading my Bible. Like that's kind of where I was, and so to be here is just not a trajectory I had imagined for myself.
Capital B, capital F.
Yeah.
In some spaces of Black America, it probably still is taboo to claim a Black feminist politics. You do so, very honestly, not only holding Black men accountable for all our shit, but also tackling, as you do in the book, the difficult relationships between Black girls. You know, there is a meanness that we see that starts, you know, literally in daycare across cribs.
Not across cribs, though, right?
You know, that we bear witness to in professional lives and everyday lives. What does it mean to claim a Black feminist politics at this moment?
Part of it is about me being very clear that I know who saved my life, and it isn't always about the ways in which we were nice to each other. It is about the ways that we have shown up for each other even when it was really hard. So I talk about having like homegirls in middle school who were also mean girls to me, but how it was this weird thing because we needed each other. So we stuck together even though sometimes we couldn't stand each other. And we don't talk about the ways that like structurally, that's often what happens with Black girls, is that sometimes it's not a natural affinity thing. It is like we need each other or we won't make it. But what I also hope, I think people like to sensationalize what are very human conflicts. Yeah. And what I want to do is make space to not demonize and vilify any kind of Black girl, because I'm sure that I haven't always gotten this right either. But I also want to say that politically, just as sure as I am personally about how important and how essential Black women are to me, politically, I'm very sure that any of the sort of places we're trying to go, we can't get to them if Black women are not front and center, and if Black women and girls don't figure out how to take care of each other. And one additional thing to say about that is, anybody who knows me knows I ride for Black women and girls even when I don't personally like them. Like, you could do some shit and I'd be like, I don't really like you, but this thing that happened to you is terrible, and we can't have that, right? Because the revolution isn't like bringing everybody that you like. It's bringing everybody, right?
Right. If I'm bored and I need some entertainment, I go to Facebook and spend some time on Greg Tate's page, spend some time on Kiesie's page, and let me see who Brittney mad at today. And a few months ago, I remember you posting on Facebook complaining about kind of like the industry of thought pieces, right? Yeah. And I'm looking at all these young folks trying to find their voice on and trying to provide content for somebody's other corporate entity. And of course, the irony of you saying that is that, well, you know, Brittney, all those folks are trying to be you.
Yeah, yeah.
Which brings me to another question. I mean, one of the things I think is really alarming, at least for me, given where I come through and my training and what I know is your training also, there are a lot of opportunities now to do Black cultural criticism.
Yeah.
Some of it isn't really Black cultural criticism. A lot of it isn't very good.
Yeah.
Some of the best voices get lost. Yeah. Right, because they're not repping for the right content provider and what have you.
Yeah.
What do you say to young folks now who want to do this, but don't necessarily see it as something that you actually need to be trained on some level to do?
Yeah, you know, I don't know that I'm navigating like my relationship to, I like to call them the late millennials. I call myself an early millennial. I'm being shady, absolutely. But the thing that I'm always saying to young folks when we talk is, remember that good scholarship in whatever form, whether it's in the academy or outside of it, takes time. It's still a slow process. Right. And part of and that's hard because being on that think piece wheel, there's so much pressure to respond in the moment. But when I was doing it because I'd had a lot of years to just incubate, right? Where a lot of young folks don't have the space to incubate. But the other thing is, if you're going to be in that space where you're doing a lot of writing, then you got to take the craft seriously enough to read almost as much as you write. Just read and read broadly, and that will help substantially.
The Brittney Cooper School of Black Thought.
Nah.
Funded by some university somewhere in this country or in the world, right? This is my version of Tower Records' Desert Island Disc, right?
Okay.
You got 5 people that you need to start this school, the Brittney Cooper School of Black Thought, who are going to be colleagues and teachers and folks in the trenches with you.
Wow.
What does that look like?
That's hard. I can only bring 5? Oh my God. Who would I bring? Well, see, I roll with a crew, so
and that's even a difficult choice amongst the crew, right?
Let me see. I would bring Treva Lindsay. I would bring her both because she's like an amazing scholar, but also because if necessary, she will fight, which is not a thing that everyone knows about her. She's gonna kill me for saying that publicly. Who else would I bring? I would bring my Wonder Twin, Susanna Morris, because she is she is the sort of Afrofuturist making moves, and I think she's important for the work of imagination. I would bring a young writer like Michael Denzel Smith, who I think doesn't get enough shine, but who is one of the most committed brothers that in the newer generation.
Thoughtful.
Yeah, and genuinely sort of committed. And in that same vein, I would bring Darnell Moore, because Darnell is righteous. And I would probably, look, this 5 is not sufficient, but I would bring Christy Dotson, who is a Black feminist philosopher that not a lot of folks know outside of philosophy circles, but who I think is one of our most brilliant minds.
What do you want to tell people that's important about this book?
That you don't have to have all your shit figured out in order to read and enjoy it. That I'm not trying to perform wokeness. I'm trying to have a real conversation. So that this is the book you would have if you came over and sat on my couch and we got to drink some wine and talk about it. That's the conversation I'm having in this book.
You're watching Left of Black. We were joined today by Professor Brittney Cooper, the author of Eloquent Rage, a Black feminist discovers her superpower.
Hey.
Thanks for joining us, Brittney.
Thanks for having me.
Black lights and booze burn when I record for Watts. And every black like Troy Davis who never had a fair shot. All black everything, everything black, culture over everything.